Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon which part of the world you're on. Mr. Bill here. Mr. Bill, ITAM, as a lot of folks know me in the industry. And I'm doing this as a fireside chat. I started doing this a couple weeks ago, and actually its whole idea behind it is to be able to help you better understand what's happening within our world. And for those that don't know me, my name is Bill, Mr. Bill Talbot, and I've been in the industry about 30 years now. I was literally one of those end user support technicians who got the email saying, okay, Bill, you're doing great end user support. Now I want you to track all the hardware and software so we can do our tickets better. Did I know what to do? I did not. But did I figure it out? I did. And being able to help not just that organizations thrive, but now with the last 30 years, I've helped over 4,000 practitioners and enterprises go that next step so they understand how to manage their environment. And that's why I wanted to talk here. And this is part of my giving back. I want you to be more informed on how to perform your task, how to perform your role. And I had an interesting conversation this week. And that's the whole idea behind the Fireside Chat. I want to share some learnings I had, because there's a lot of things when it comes to certifications or credentials. You come to look at standards that are out there, or even tools and how well they perform the job. And I had a couple of conversations. And that's what I wanted to talk about this week is, are they meeting management's expectations? Last week, we talked a little bit about products not meeting expectations. And there's a little bit on that, but I'm going to go a little bit more deeper. More deeper? That made sense to me, right? Anyways, where I'm going on this topic is I was talking with a practitioner, and she's 4 months into the industry. And she wanted to learn more about software asset management. I had a great discussion earlier in the week. I had a webinar on back to basics and talking about, okay, what do you need to foundationally understand? She thrived and wanted to learn more. And it's like, hey, it was one of my coaching calls. I totally love it. And if you want to be part of the coaching call, go to one-on-one, that's number one, on1.itmc.org and sign up. Absolutely. I'm more than happy to chat with you. It's a 30-minute call. But where I'm coming from on this is I asked her the question, and keep in mind, she's 4 months into it and curious. And I love the curiosity. Love it. Thrive it. Because we should all be curious. That's what we do. And I asked her the question. I said, how long do you believe it'll take for you to be a certified software asset manager? And the answer was a year and a half. I was floored. And she says, and to be more proficient, when you get really proficient in it, it says it's about 3 years. And that just depends upon the products you're working with, et cetera. It was great. Her answer was phenomenal. Because as we know, to become any type of certification, you usually get that certificate within a couple hours, if that long, maybe a day, if you're lucky, or potentially within a couple days, maybe a week. And then you get that certificate. And as we know, for reality, that certificate does not mean the person understands how that role works. And my point's not to slam anyone who's taken it. I'm saying, think about what else you need to achieve. That certificate's not it. That certificate is a piece of paper, literally saying, okay, you did something, you learned something, that's great. How do you apply it? And hence the reason why I created the co-op, the IT management co-op, is to really go that next step. But my point here is to talk about that conversation, go back to that year and a half discussion or year and a half requirement. She brought up a very good point. And she was talking about the proficiencies. And she says, well, I need to understand the licensing works and the team and how do you do the compliance. And she had a auditing background from her university degree. And I understood what some of it was. And she had legal, she understood the contract, she understood how to audit, but she didn't understand how to apply to her software asset management. And I went to her when she told me that, it's like, oh my gosh, you've got the foundation to software asset management. If you know how to audit, you know how to compare data, you know how it all comes together. It's like, I want you in a heartbeat on my team. Heartbeat. Because those are some of the traits we're missing in what we see today. Really missing how it all comes to apply. But back to that year and a half requirement, or even 3 years. When you think about the amount of time it takes for individuals to come and what they get a piece of paper for credentials versus the reality, there's no one holding anybody else accountable for making sure you're learning the right skills. None, right? And I put that on the industry as a whole. I put that in the industry as a whole to say, we failed you. I'll just put it straight out. We failed you. Because from an accountability standpoint, there needs to be some accountability more than just, okay, here's a certificate, take an exam, to say, you understand this. You understand this content, and you understand it from an application as well as what you understand from a test. And for me, I hate exams. Despise them. That's why I've always done open book exams whenever I've done a course. Always. Because I find it's more telling on several fronts. It's more telling because when you look at the exam and you go through it, it's like, you know where you've been. It just happened. Write up. Make it happen. And those trick questions, and trust me, there's a lot of trick questions, exams out there. Those should be thrown out. Thrown out, period, done, end of story. But most importantly, it's almost like, when you get a certified public accountant, at least here in the States, when you get a CPA degree, you have to take your exam and you study days. I had some really good friends of mine who've been CPAs, and I saw them go through the exam and the agony, et cetera, and pass and fail and all the rest. But you also have to have additional time and application before you actually get the CPA. It's about application. We need to do the same within our industry to show, okay, have you applied it? How's it being perceived? What's the continual education for this? Not just recertified, but the continual education. And we've not looked into that. And I'll put that on the industry as a whole. And that goes for hardware asset management, software asset management, and configuration management. FinOps may be going there. I haven't looked into it. It may have a little bit more meat to the bone. That's great. I applaud it. They're actually doing it from several different angles. I love what they're doing, actually. Stuff I've done for over 20 years. So they've actually formalized it. Phenomenal. But my point behind that certification is we have to look and make ourselves accountable. Accountable for what we do. Accountability. Accountability for us, the task we perform, the outcomes we perform, the task we perform, as well as make the folks that are doing the classes accountable. And where I'm coming from is, if you look at all the trainings today, you'll have the $25 course, you'll have a $2,000 course, and you'll have something kind of in between, maybe more expensive too. The question is, when you take that and you buy that course, what assurances are you having that you will understand? What assurance is being made to your management, in addition to you, that you will understand what you need for that role? Yeah, exactly. Usually it's none. That's one of our failures today, is we need to be more accountable in what we're doing and how we're doing it. And my point, again, is not to slam anybody, but it's more to raise the bar. We have to raise the bar for us to succeed. Have to. If we want to have a voice, we need to have a voice that's static, that we're not just static, that's understood, that clarity. And management expects something more than just an acronym. I was called by a recruiter earlier this week, and they said, "Well, do you have this certification?" It's like, well, I am a fellow. And it's like, okay, that counts. Well, my point behind that is the credential he wanted very specifically around managing software. So he said, "Oh, we have to have this certification." And it was about doing hardware, software asset management, process work, etc. And I went back to the recruiter. I said, "You realize that credential is not going to help them, not going to find the right person for you, right?" Now, I'm not expecting the recruiter to understand, for several reasons, not understand. But the reality is the credentials is actually causing issues more than helping. Sure, you can get the credentials, but when you fail in that role, that makes the credential look bad. That makes the rest of the industry look bad. That's what I'm talking about. That's my plea to you, to actually think about how you're applying your skills. Think about how you're applying in those applications. It's more than just monetary gain. And trust me, the monetary side is driving me crazy right now, because there's no standard we have for our disciplines. But my point is, until we get the credentials and our knowledge straight, we're not going to be able to set the bar on the value of the monetary side. It's not possible. Even with the standards coming out, and I mean, the ISO standard just recently came out. Awesome, great, phenomenal. So what? I'm going to have a webinar inside of the co-op this week for any of my members. So just a heads up, and feel free to join if you want to be part of it. Be part of this webinar. We're gonna go through the ISO standard, and we're going to talk about what that ISO-1 really means to the actual practitioner to help you prepare to not just understand it, but to exceed it. It's just another example. You have that happening, great. You have the paperwork there. It's over 20 years late. It is what it is, right? But at the same time, my point's not to slam it, but okay, you have a foundation. It's still missing the mark on where management needs to be. I'll put it this way. I've seen better security documents within the US government talking about hardware and software asset management than the ISO standard is. Fact. Absolute fact. As well as examples and conditions and how they should be doing it. That's my point. We can go through all this consulting and try to make it happen, but the reality is, what value is it? I'm not saying we shouldn't have a standard. I'm not saying that at all. But let's identify and make sure we're aligned where we need to be. Because when we look at that, we identify how successful we can be. At least for me, see, when it comes to asset management, software asset management, configuration management, it's a continual improvement program. I did not say project. I said program very specifically. It's an ongoing program. It's not something you do one and done. It has to be continual improvement, and you have to do your quality checks. Anyone that's not doing that foundationally is not doing that, as well as looking at your people, their process, your technology, the data, and the governance around it, you will fail. You will fail. It's not a doomsday kind of comment. I'm just telling you what you're about to walk into in that wall. And I apologize up front if you already hit that and didn't realize it, and I didn't get to you quick enough. But I'm more than happy to help you overcome that and identify that navigation and figure out where you need to go next. Because that's the other part I've seen with a lot of our practitioners today, is not understanding how to move forward. See, when you get all these credentials, that's great. That's only 20% of the job. Yes, I did say 20% of the job. The rest of it, you have to learn on your own. That's the challenge today. Consulting helps. Trust me, I've been consulting now for close to 30 years, 25 plus years. And does everyone have it perfect? They don't, but that's okay. Each business need for how they track hardware, software, and even configuration items is going to vary. Absolutely. You may say, well, Bill, there has to be a standard. We have to do it consistently across the board. There are some consistent items. I'll give an example. Is the need and the requirements for your financial institution, pick whichever one you bank with, credit card company, banking company, whomever, is that the same as the technology company you work with? Your requirements. Is your banking requirements the same as your technology company requirements as far as how they perform their function and your need for them? The answer is no. You have different business needs. That's why they're in business. Does that change as well from an insurance, a car manufacturer, or any type of manufacturing? It's going to vary again. Because of that, your needs for managing your configuration items within your CMDB, including relationships, how you manage your assets and what you're actually tracking and actually maintaining from a financial alignment within that environment will change. And the software and how you look at how it's installed, how it's licensed in that contractual agreement, that will also vary. That's my point. We can have a standard to a degree, but it's going to vary. Similar to policies. Policies change from environment to environment as well. And that's where we actually all need to come together and talk about this more. Talk it more consistently and talk smart about it. Don't put everyone in silos. Don't make it all about the vendors. Don't make it all about the solution providers. honestly, the ones that need to speak up, and I am broken record on this for over 25 years. The end users, the practitioners, aka you, need to speak up and say, this is what I need. You have that voice. You absolutely have that voice. And it's time to speak up and present it. And honestly, if it's a product choice that the product vendor, your executive made, okay, here's the vendor you're going to bring in, and you find out it doesn't fit, be honest with him. Nobody likes to be wrong. Nobody likes to be wrong. I like to be aware of if I made a mistake of a decision so I can make changes as necessary. Your management thinks exactly the same way. And that's what you need to start thinking like. You need to think about how we can help management be better prepared instead of hitting that brick wall. See, as practitioners, sometimes we like to speak up and present, and that's always been my focus for any practitioner is for you to have a voice. I want you to have a voice so you enjoy what you're doing. You also know how to articulate and present just like this. I've now been a conference speaker for over 20 years. Did I realize I was going to turn to this when I started 25 years ago? Actually, it's almost 30 years ago. No. But am I having a blast? Absolutely. Am I meeting a lot of great people? I am. Am I helping motivate so you're able to go that next step? Absolutely. Because when that happens, you're able to go that next step and be more successful. That's what I'm talking about. How can you be successful? So I blabbed quite a bit, but here's an action item I want you to take and really think about it. Think about some of the problems you have today. It's a little action item for you. Think of all the problems, a couple of problems you have in the office. It could be look at the software agreement, something coming up, an audit that's underway. It could be a internal IT audit within your environment. Look at the process. It may be looking at, okay, resources, how you're going to onboard some new team members. It may talk about how you're going to be offboarding employees. It could be talking about a recent layoff that occurred because the economy. There's all sorts of different scenarios. It could be a new integration, whatever it is. Think about where you believe that gap's going to be. Where you believe that gap's going to be. Don't worry about everybody else. I want you to forget about it, but put your blinders on. Think about where you believe it's going to be. Just write it down. It's like 3 items. You can do 5 if you want. That's fine. But keep it short. Now, what I want you to do is those 3 items, put them aside tomorrow or Monday morning, depending on where you are. I want you to review those again and see if it's still true. You took what you did, you took what was in your brain, immediately came to mind, wrote those down. On Monday morning, I want you to take a look at them, validate them one more time, and then take another 15 minutes to identify what you, and that's like you, are going to do to help fix that problem, help lead the problem. See, I say that because in this industry, people don't talk like that. In this industry, we need to talk like that. It's not about overwhelming someone. It's about thinking for ourselves. Sure, standards are out there, but as I just explained, how we're managing our environments, it will vary. We are critical to the entire enterprise, whether you talk about the hardware asset management, software asset management, configuration management. It could be virtual, it could be cloud. We are key to the enterprise. Why do I say that? It's a simple question. You go talk to your executives. Ask them what will happen to them. This is really good if you don't get any support, by the way. This is a great question. Go to your executives and say, okay, you don't want my services? Let's turn off all the technology in the company and see where we go. Let's turn it off. It goes, why? It's because you said you don't need them for them to be managed. Therefore, let's turn everything off. You'll have a more respectful conversation. You just connected with your management and your leadership to say, here's our next step. Now, don't get me wrong, not everybody has those roles. And sometimes you're just looking at the procurement, what's coming in. Try to think a little bit further beyond that. Do what you're proficient in. Don't do anything crazy. But I want you to think outside the box a little bit. That's my challenge for you until next week. Think about how you're able to move that forward. Again, if you want any coaching or anything like that, feel free to reach out to me. It's oneonone.itmc.org. And if you want to be part of the co-op, highly recommend it. We're having a blast over there. A lot of these coaching sessions are actually part of that. So feel free to be a part of the co-op. We can make that happen anytime you want to as well. But most importantly, have fun, enjoy what you do, and be able to relax and realize that you've done your best that you can, and you're ready for the next week. Because when you do that, you've done all you can do. When you've done that, you can start relaxing and refreshing and take some time at home. And when you take some time at home, your loved ones or significant others will really appreciate it, because that's who you're actually working for. Well, that's Mr. Bill. I'm going to sign off for now, but you have yourself a great rest of the weekend and be safe now.